Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is top real estate agent Victoria Stewart Davis of Pacific Union and Christie's International Real Estate based out of San Francisco, California. Victoria is celebrating 10 years with Pacific Union and Christie's International Real Estate this year and counts over 15 years of experience in residential real estate and development sales. Victoria is a top-producing luxury residential property professional who also specializes in high-end residential development in the city of San Francisco. This year, she represented a buyer for one of the 5 most expensive home sales in San Francisco. Last year, she represented buyers for both the most expensive recorded cooperative apartment sale and the largest residential sale in the South Beach neighborhood to date. In 2014, she represented Grosvenor Americas, first residential development project in the Nob Hill, Russian Hill area of San Francisco. 34 luxury market rate units sold and closed in 3 months' time. She and her husband are proud San Francisco residents and property owners who count bringing up 2 young city kids and conducting a studs-out remodel of their city home among their favorite accomplishments. With over $140 million in sales since 2013, Victoria continues to solidify her status as an up-and-coming industry leader. All right, with all that said, Victoria, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith, for having me.
Hey, Victoria, if we could start for our listeners, what led you into real estate? Was it something that you always knew you wanted to do, or did you maybe stumble into it?
Well, I think that I came by it naturally. My mother is a successful real estate agent down in the South Bay area, and I recall times growing up where she would answer the phone at dinner, and I thought to myself, I'm never going to do that. But quite literally, my first job in real estate was in the mailroom of her real estate firm, and that was my first exposure to really working in real estate and with several real estate agents. But with that, I pursued a different path for some time. I actually went to college on a music scholarship and went an entirely different path. But ultimately found my way back to real estate in one way or another, and eventually decided that residential real estate was the career that was the most fulfilling for me, and the path that I ultimately took to get where I am now.
And do you think you can talk a little bit about some of the personal attributes, traits, or qualities you think have most contributed to the success that you've had in real estate?
Sure. I think the number one quality that I bring to the table is effective communication, both written and verbal. I think it's so fundamental to any process, and particularly in real estate. There's just so many different personalities, so many different elements of the process that have to be brought together to ultimately execute a successful transaction, and most importantly, to maintain wonderful relationships with clients. So the ability to really understand individuals who are coming from various perspectives and platforms, and bring everybody together in a cohesive way to ultimately solve problems and attain individuals' goals.
And Victoria, do you think you'd give our listeners an example of when these traits have played a role in your path toward success?
Sure. I can think of at least a couple of times, and these were rather high-profile transactions where setting expectations and communicating those expectations was fundamental to the process. You would think at a higher level of transaction that perhaps clients have been through the process several times, but it's important to go back and really explain the process, very, very thoroughly. And I can think of at least one time where we were getting toward the end of closing a cooperative apartment transaction at a pretty high purchase price, and there were several, elements that the clients discovered through some of their co-op interviews that were material to them in nature in terms of moving forward with the transaction. And part of what made us successful in completing that transaction was going back and really talking to the sellers and finding out from the clients what was important to them. Was there a dollar amount that would enable them to move forward with the transaction that they felt, sufficiently took all of those issues into consideration in moving forward? And really it's about approaching the sellers and working with the agent on the other side and communicating through some of those issues in a way where people are not combative, but rather trying to understand one another and come to a successful resolution. Because, at a certain dollar amount, it is a little bit easier for some buyers to simply walk away when they don't want to deal with a hassle. But it's kind of keeping egos and keeping expectations in line and keeping egos out of it. And, really for me, in any successful negotiation, we're trying to look at everything as a Venn diagram and find the biggest circle in the middle that makes everybody the happiest, rather than just winning or losing. It's about making everybody as happy as they can possibly be, which is entirely possible, I believe, when you approach it that way.
And Victoria, I think that whenever people are on a path to success, that it's not always a smooth road to get there. There's always trials and tribulations along the way. So can you talk a little bit about some of the adversities or trials that you had to overcome in order to achieve your goals?
Sure. I think that for many of us in the real estate industry and several other industries, that the recession that started in 2008 was an enormous challenge. It was a trying time, and I spent every day for several years working with clients, having listings that weren't selling. So certainly it was no lack of work to be done, but the results just weren't as plentiful. And working with clients to really understand what their options were. In some cases, that luckily in San Francisco enabled my clients to rent their properties out during that time when their properties weren't selling. Rents at that time were still, pretty high, and kind of get through the storm until ultimately we were able to sell their property for a higher price point. So one example would be a client who owned a condo in a building that had a cap for the percentage of units that could be rented, and the HOA had already reached that cap. And so in order for us to get through the solving her problem of renting her place because she had to move away and it simply wasn't selling, I was able to help her interface with the HOA and make a case for the HOA to meet and change the criteria to enable her to rent her unit. So that'd be one example of just continuing to look at options, continuing to evaluate what things can be moved and changed, and just never giving up on solutions for clients. But it was a difficult time for everybody, obviously, and it has affected the way that I do business. It's affected the way that I look at my business. I like to say you always have to make hay while the sun shines. Real estate is very cyclical, and that's something I've come to understand as well. You have to manage your business like a business. That's something that I learned during that time. So that was one example of how I try to directly interface to get a client through a specific situation during a very, very troubling time, during the time of financial crisis. But I also allowed it to inform me moving forward, is that I'm able to discuss that time with my clients now and help them plan for what I call the worst case scenario. In every transaction, I try to evaluate it not just as that one particular sale, but really take the role as being a high-level advisor for my clients. We don't look at one house as just, that one particular sale, but we look at how that home fits into their overall goals and their overall strategy. What is it as an investment in their overall portfolio? And we look at it as, what's the worst case scenario? If they purchase this home and we have a repeat financial crisis, what are the strategies that we're going to build around that worst case scenario so that they feel confident moving forward, that they're somewhat insulated, that they've accepted those risks so in all of that, we assess their risk tolerance. That is one way that I've learned how to come out of the adversity of the financial crisis. I also, really got smart in running my business like a business. I have my time to give, obviously, and how I utilize and strategically plan my time is important. It's my greatest asset in my business, my time and my expertise, and just managing money, going every quarter, looking at a profit and loss and creating the marketing plan every year and every quarter checking in to ensure that we're following that marketing plan, using marketing dollars wisely. And all of that, I think, has been informed by some of those, leaner, more difficult times. It's just always evaluating a client's needs, in terms of their worst case scenario and how, giving them the confidence that they'll get through it to alleviate some of their fears about moving forward and, again, looking at it as a part of a bigger picture.
Excellent. And Victoria, what kept you going when you hit these obstacles? Why don't you give up on things? What's your driving force?
So I tend to be somewhat of a people pleaser, and I really, really like to help people. And my clients really were the ones who propelled me forward, who gave me the inspiration to want to continue to help them. Whether it is a recession or not a recession, people need a place to live. And at that time also, I think I, was taking Warren Buffett's words to heart, which are, and when people get fearful, I get greedy. When people get greedy, I get fearful. So I tried to apply that in my personal life by renting out my own home and, actually purchasing a new home, which I hope would inspire some of my clients to have the same courage to move forward during that time as well. And really just I enjoy the relationships I have with clients, again, taking that role as their high-level advisor, staying close to them, throughout these experiences in their lives. And when I consider taking on a client, it's a lifetime relationship. And I look at myself as their real estate advisor, not just helping them buy or sell one particular home.
And Victoria, I guess looking forward, what's your vision for your business and your career, say, over the next 5 years?
I really enjoy working with clients across all price points, and I've enjoyed delving into the luxury market over the past several years. I love architecture. I love San Francisco. So for me, some of the most rewarding aspects of what I do is to be a part of this community in San Francisco. I live here. I'm raising my children here. So what I would enjoy over the next 5 years, continuing to bolster those relationships. I love participating in my clients' charitable endeavors, and I find that is really rewarding. I love being involved in the schools here for my clients who do have children or are considering bringing children up in the city. I love to get involved with their lives and really show them how it can be possible. So community building is a huge aspect of what I'd like to spend more of my time in my business efforts towards. I also enjoy, along those lines, the development business that I'm a part of. I am, happy to represent several developer clients in San Francisco, Grosvenor Americas being one of my clients, and really working on some very exciting, architecturally exciting projects, sort of infill residential projects. That to me is also building a community, putting together an actual building in a neighborhood in San Francisco. I love that. I love being a part of that. And to that effect, I consult with developers as well, and really how to create, beautiful buildings in our city that enhance the environment in which we live. So that's what keeps me going, and that's where I see my business going, is continuing that community building aspect through, through the sale of some of the really beautiful high-end homes that I'm privileged to represent, and also of these infill developments, which are exciting to the landscape.
And Victoria, kind of on top of that, what do you feel is the best way that you market yourself as a real estate professional so that you can have continual growth?
My favorite way to allocate my marketing budget is really and truly to spend time with my clients, to invest in their charitable endeavors, to take them out to dinner, to host events in their homes for, whatever their celebration might be, whether it is a, housewarming party or beyond. I do a lot of traditional marketing, of course, digital marketing and sending out mailers, things of that nature. But for me, the most rewarding part of growing my business is just building those relationships and the referrals that come from clients who are really happy with my work and happy to keep me as their advisor and really, feel that sense of loyalty and want to bring their friends and family members. I end up working with, full families. I might do, anywhere between 5 and 10 sales just between one family, that I end up working with, and that is really enriching and exciting. And that's the way that I like to focus on growing my business is organically through referrals, and that's what I base a lot of my time allocation towards marketing and a lot of my budget for marketing to doing. In addition, of course, to traditionally marketing my listings and all the other ways that support my clients who sell their homes. That obviously I sink a lot of time, effort, and energy and leave no stone unturned when it comes to selling their homes. So those are the ways that I see fit to allocate my marketing dollars.
Excellent. And Victoria, I think sometimes the general public has a certain perception of real estate agents, based upon what they think that you actually do, the value that you provide from both a buyer and a seller standpoint. So what do you think the biggest misconception or myth that people have about working with a real estate agent?
I think that a misconception about some real estate agents is that they're purely transactional, that they're just looking to execute on one sale. I think it's different in every area of the country, but I will say for San Francisco, one of the reasons I'm really proud to be involved with the real estate community here is, on the whole, agents have a very high level of business acumen and financial literacy. It's pretty much required to work with some of the individuals who are buying and selling homes in this area. And I think there's a perception, particularly in the San Francisco market, because it has been so robust. We go through not really so much boom bust, but it seems like boom cycles more than anything in the last few years. I think that people have a perception that we just throw a for sale sign out in front of the house and 10 people write offers, and we just advise our sellers to take the highest one, and that's that. And on the other side of it, I think that there perhaps is a perception that, as we advise buyers to get a house, that we just tell them to write the highest offer for all cash and they'll win. It's as easy as that. And I think all of that is too simplistic and rather misinformed. I think that my clients would certainly attest to the fact that I take on that role as being a much higher level advisor for them beyond just one particular house. And there are, a lot of strategic elements to, advising a buyer in this marketplace, which happens to be very competitive, and a lot of strategic elements to advising a seller. We had one situation where my seller was, selling his condo after many, many years. We ultimately procured 6 offers on his home, and my advice to him was not to take the number 1 offer. My advice to him was to work with the number 4 offer and bring that number 4 offer up as much as possible in terms of price. But there were a number of reasons why I advised that, and part of it was the relationship that I had with that agent. You have to keep in mind that when you set an offer date and agents are writing offers, it's not always predictable what the level of competition is going to be. So as a listing agent, it's important to understand how other agents work, and it is a community where many of us know each other and how one another work, and how they're likely to advise their client, and really, ultimately bring forth the most riskless offer that you can, without offending anybody or losing any of the other offers in the process. And it can be extremely nuanced, very, very time intense, and very relationship based. It's not as simple as throwing up a for sale sign. And there's a lot of elements that you have to take into consideration about the building. If a buyer has financing, there are so many elements to the financing that may have nothing to do with the borrower. And there's a lot of strategic work that goes into ensuring that the building and or the unit and or the home are up to a level where you're not going to face any snags in the financing, or understanding what those snags are in advance. Mitigating risk is a huge part of what I do with all my clients, whether it's their investment in their life, how this particular property fits into their overall investment in their life, what their risk tolerance is where that's concerned, or whether it's looking at an individual transaction and whether I'm on the seller or buyer side, is mitigating risk through and through to ensure that you have the most successful results. And sometimes, almost always, that relates to price, but it's not just price. It's about minimizing their personal risks, minimizing any trauma or stress that comes to them personally as a result of working through this particular transaction. And again, that goes back to what I said initially about communication. Is communicating, understanding what makes everybody tick, understanding what makes your clients tick, how they like to be communicated with, what are things that are really, really important to them. For some people, taking an offer that's $50,000 less is personally worth it, because that offer might be the one that presents the least amount of risk and the least amount of personal stress. So that, that all goes to priorities, and you can only know that when you truly, truly communicate. And I think that is why there is a huge misconception about what real estate agents do. When you work with a really, really good real estate agent who's dedicated to you as a client, I think you'll find what the difference is. And happy to say there's lots of other people that work here in San Francisco, my colleagues who I enjoy working with, who approach it similarly as I do. And that's when I think we can expose our clients to the value that real estate agents bring. Not just a salesperson, but a strategic advisor.
Excellent. And Victoria, let's say you get a call from a family member or a friend, and they're in another state, and they want to sell their home. Obviously, with your experience and probably with your connections and your networking, you might be able to do a referral or send them an agent that they could use. But from a general advice standpoint, what advice would you give them about selecting an agent that could best serve their needs?
I think it's really important to call some of their other clients and interview their other clients and find out whether stylistically and communication-wise they are aligned. Real estate is fundamentally personal, and I think it's important to find a good match in a realtor, somebody who communicates in a way that you find effective. I think it's really important to ask them, what are some issues that you've encountered, and how did you get through those issues? What are some of the most, recent challenges you've faced in representing buyers in your area, and what advice would you give me to help me be more prepared for that environment, seeing as I'm moving into that area and am new to purchasing a home or potentially to selling a home in that particular area. I think that real estate is location, very, very geographically based, but fundamentally an experience of communication, and understanding how you communicate with that agent is going to really inform you how the process is going to go to minimize the stress to you.
And obviously you're based in the San Francisco area, so if somebody's looking for real estate services or an agent in that general area, what's the best way they can find out about you and how you can help them?
I like to believe the best way for them to find out about me is to call me, directly and set up an initial consult. But if you'd like to know a little bit more about my business, they can go to my website, which is vsdproperties.com. That's V as in Victoria, S as in Stewart, D as in Davis, properties.com. And that should give you a really good idea of some of my areas of expertise and some of the areas of the city that I sell the most real estate in, and some client testimonials as well.
Excellent. Well, Victoria, I obviously want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come here today and share all your professional real estate experience with all of our listeners. And if you're listening and you want to learn more about Victoria and how she can help you, you can go to her website, like she said. Also, below this interview, we'll have a link to her site and any other contact information we have, so you can see how she can help you with your real estate service needs. So with all that said, everybody, until our next show, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.